I was 17 when it happened. My two friends, Tyler and Jess, convinced me to check out this abandoned house just outside our town in rural Pennsylvania. It was the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Half hidden by trees, with vines crawling up the crumbling brick walls. The windows were shattered, and the paint had long peeled away. But the one thing that stood out was the bright red door. Fresh, vibrant, like someone had painted it yesterday. Everything else looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. We parked our bikes by the edge of the road and cut through the overgrown yard. The grass came up to my knees, and every step made that dry, crunching sound like no one had walked there in years. But something in my gut felt off, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. Tyler was the first to push open the red door. It creaked loud, long, and too real, not the way movies do it with cheesy sound effects. This one sounded like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, the smell hit us immediately. Mildew, rotting wood, something metallic under the surface. Dust hung in the air like fog. We stepped into what looked like a living room. The furniture was still there, just covered in white sheets, like someone left in a hurry and thought they'd come back. There were picture frames on the walls. All the faces were scratched out. That was the first thing that felt wrong. We moved through the house, whispering and laughing nervously. The kind of laughter that barely masks the creeping dread under your skin. Jess found a stuffed bear in one of the upstairs bedrooms. It was sitting upright on the bed too neatly to deliberate. She picked it up, then froze. "There's something inside," she whispered. She shook it. Something hard knocked around inside its stomach. I told her to put it down. But later, I still think of what was inside the teddy bear. In the hallway, we found the staircase to the basement. No lights, no railing, just steep wooden steps vanishing into darkness. Tyler, being the idiot he always was, pointed his phone flashlight into the black void and said, "Let's check it out." We hesitated, but curiosity, it's a hell of a drug. We followed him down. The basement was cold, colder than it had any right to be, even for a house like that. The kind of cold that clung to your bones. The walls were lined with shelves. Dozens of jars sat there, coated in dust. Some held old screws and nails, rusted beyond use, but others had things in them. One held something that looked like a tooth longer than it should be. Another, a shriveled finger, maybe a monkey's. I told myself it was fake. I had to believe it was fake. Then we heard it. Footsteps, upstairs. Slow, heavy, dragging. We froze. Tyler killed his flashlight instantly. We stood there in the pitch black, hearts racing, breath caught in our throats. The steps moved across the floor above us. Slow, deliberate, then stopped, right above where we were standing. Jess grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. No one breathed. Then came the sound. Someone or something was pounding on the basement door at the top of the stairs. 3 times. Not frantic, not rushed but deliberate. But the door didn't open, it just sat there silently. Then again, the banging continued. We didn't move, and then, the pounding stopped. The house became eerily silent. After what seemed like a while, we heard footsteps moving away across the floorboards towards the back of the house. Tyler hissed, "Move, now." He turned his flashlight back on barely a flicker. We climbed the stairs fast but quiet, trying not to let them creak. At the top, the red door was still wide open just like we left it. Whoever or whatever had been in the house hadn't shut it. Or maybe it had left it open for us. We didn't wait to find out. We ran. Jess was already outside, waving us on, screaming for us to hurry. We jumped on our bikes, didn't say a word, and pedaled like hell until the house was nothing but a shadow behind us. We never talked about it again, and I've never been back. I used to do urban exploration as a hobby, mostly with my older cousin, Vince. He was the kind of guy who'd walk into any building without a second thought. Me, I liked the thrill, but I always had a bad feeling in places that felt wrong. This happened about 4 years ago in Michigan. We found an old hospital that had been shut down since the late 90s. It was one of those mental health facilities, the kind with long hallways, barred windows, and a history nobody wants to talk about. We'd heard rumors of underground tunnels and unmarked rooms, but most people avoided the place. Something about how security guards refused to patrol it after dark. Of course, Vince was all in. We parked a few blocks away and made our way in through a side entrance. The whole building had no power, no lights, and no sound. Just the creaking of metal and distant wind pushing through broken windows. The second we stepped in, my flashlight flickered. Not enough to go out, just enough to mess with my head. We moved through the lower floors, and it was pretty standard. The hallways were packed with old equipments, collapsed ceilings, graffiti, mold. The air felt thick and metallic, like dried blood. But the deeper we went, the more it felt inhabited. There were signs of squatters at first, old blankets, trash, beer cans. But then we started seeing things that didn't make sense. Fresh claw marks on a metal stretcher, a pair of shoes neatly placed in front of a locked door. And on the third floor we found a room with dozens of Polaroids covering the walls. Every single photo was of the same hallway, the same angle, over and over. One of them had writing in the bottom corner. It just said, "Don't go past the third floor." Vince laughed it off, but I felt cold. I mean physically cold, like someone had dropped the temperature by 20 degrees in that one room. He wanted to keep going, so we climbed to the fourth floor. The second we stepped off the stairwell, something was off. The hallway lights that hadn't worked in decades flickered. Just for a second, but enough for both of us to stop walking. Then we heard it. Shuffling. Like someone dragging themselves across the floor, slowly, coming from around the corner. Vince whispered, "Someone's here." We both turned off our flashlights. And for a moment, there was silence. Until something groaned, loud, raspy, inhuman. I'm not exaggerating when I say it sounded like someone choking on gravel. Vince backed up slowly, and I followed. We turned to go back down the stairs, but the door to the stairwell slammed shut in front of us. I remember Vince yanking on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. That groaning got closer, heavier. You could hear something scraping across the walls like nails or claws. I was done. I started banging on the door, screaming, when suddenly it opened on its own. Like someone was on the other side. We didn't look back. We sprinted down the stairs, practically fell out through the exit, and didn't stop running until we were back at the car. But here's the part that keeps me up. About a week later, Vince went back. He didn't tell me he was going. I only found out after he posted a picture on his story. It was the same hallway from the Polaroids. That was the last thing he posted. At first, I thought the pictures were from the other day, but I couldn't recall him taking any photos. So, I tried calling him several times, but it went straight to voicemail. Few days passed, and Vince was nowhere to be found. No one had seen or heard from him. We reported him missing, but when the police explored the abandoned hospital, they found nothing except his phone. I was with 3 friends when we decided to check out this farmhouse just outside of town. We had heard about it from some locals that it had been abandoned for years, and there were rumors of strange occurrences surrounding it. But when you're young, you don't really believe in those kinds of stories. At least, I didn't. We didn't even bother to research it. just pulled up, parked near the old barn, and started walking around. There were broken windows, walls covered in mold, and animal bones scattered across the yard. But the house itself, well, it looked pretty ordinary on the outside. It was old, but nothing that screamed danger. We went inside through the back door. The air inside was musty, the kind of stale that gets into your lungs and makes you feel like you're suffocating. But it was silent. Not even the usual sounds of rodents or insects, just silent. We explored the main floor first, a living room, kitchen, dining room, pretty much what you'd expect. The furniture was covered in white sheets, the floorboards creaked with every step. I didn't get any bad vibes at first. I mean, yeah, it was creepy, but nothing felt like it was about to turn terrifying. We went into the basement next. Why? Because it's always the basement, right? The stairs creaked under our weight as we descended into darkness. At the bottom, we found shelves filled with old jars, canned goods. But there was one thing that stood out, a large freezer sitting in the corner, tucked under a dust-covered blanket. One of my friends, Luke, suggested we open it. He's always been the brave one, or maybe it's the idiot in him that thinks it's a good idea to poke around. He slid the freezer open, and immediately the smell hit us. Something rotten, something wrong. It wasn't like old food. It wasn't just decay, it was deeper than that. Luke stepped back, and we all leaned in for a closer look. Inside the freezer was a body. Or at least, it used to be. The face was twisted and unrecognizable, skin blackened and shriveled like something that had been preserved way past its natural state. The body was wrapped in old plastic, and the smell. It was like it had been there for 100 years, left to rot in the cold, forgotten. I'm not sure who screamed first. Maybe it was Luke, maybe it was me, but we all ran. We didn't care about the rest of the house anymore. We didn't care about what else might have been hidden in those dark corners. We bolted upstairs, through the living room, and out the door. We didn't stop until we were back in the car, doors locked, hearts racing. But the weirdest part came a week later. We reported the body to the police. They sent someone out to investigate. But when they got to the farmhouse, the freezer was gone. No sign of it, no body. They said we must have been mistaken. Maybe it was an old prop or some kind of prank. But I know what I saw. The freezer was real, the body was real, and I don't know who or what was trying to keep it hidden in that house. I've been exploring abandoned places for years, but I've never done it alone. There's a rule in urban exploration. You never go in by yourself. It's just common sense. But there was this one time when Greg, one of the most experienced guys I knew, broke that rule. It happened about a year ago in a small town in the Midwest. There was this house, an old, decaying mansion that had been abandoned since the 60s. People said it was haunted, but we'd all heard the rumors. They were the usual stuff: whispers of a family gone missing, strange lights at night, and other creepy stories. We all agreed it was a dangerous place, but we never expected someone to actually disappear. Greg had been to the house a few times before. He was the guy who went in first, got the best pictures, and always made it out. But this time, something changed. He said he was going to go in alone, just to explore, get a feel for the place, and maybe grab some photos. That night, I got a call from him around 10 p.m. His voice was shaky, but he didn't seem to worry. He just said, "I'm in the basement. It's quiet, and it feels weird. There's something in here. I don't know what it is, but I think I'm gonna stay a little longer." We told him to leave, told him it wasn't worth it. But he laughed it off. "I'll be fine," he said. That was the last time I heard from him. The next morning, when he didn't show up at the usual spot for breakfast, we tried calling him. No answer. We went to his house. His parents hadn't seen him either. He wasn't answering his phone. His friends and family were worried, but no one wanted to go near the house, not without the police. But then came the police search. They went to the mansion, and they found his car parked out front. No sign of him inside the house. They looked through the basement, the rooms, the attic, nothing. But there was one thing they found that sent a chill down their spines. A single photograph on the floor of the basement, face down. When they flipped it over, it was a picture of Greg, taken just hours before he disappeared. His face was in the photo, but something wasn't right. His eyes were wide open, like he was staring at something terrifying just off camera. And in the background, faintly visible behind him, was a figure standing in the corner of the room. A shadow. The police said it looked like a person, but there was no one else in the basement when they went down there. Not even Greg's footprints, just the photo, face down. That was the last clue. They searched for weeks, but Greg was never found. No sign of him, no trace, not a single clue as to where he went or what happened to him. Some people say he's still there, somewhere in that house, that the figure in the photograph is waiting for anyone else who dares to enter. Some say he's just another soul lost in the darkness, never to escape. I haven't gone near that house since, and I'll never go back. But you can bet that every time I drive past it, I can't help but wonder. Is Greg still there, or is something else waiting for anyone who gets too close?